The distracted mind takes in nothing deeply and rejects everything that is so called pounded into it. This line comes to us from the late, great Seneca and his essay on the shortness of life. Now, as I was reading this essay, as I've read many times, because it is full of timeless wisdom, and I believe the constant reminder of our mortality is a essential practice for someone who is trying to make the most out of this life. And I came across that line and I realized, as many times that I do when I come across that line, how multitasking has just become a way of life, and how in multitasking you lose something special that you gain from a single-minded, dedicated focus on one task. Now, when we first off, you lose a lot in the moment trying to multitask. You could be making food and you're also listening to a podcast. Now, I'm not saying there's never a time and a place for this, but you shouldn't depend on it. You shouldn't need these things. And you should realize you would better consume that podcast if you were just there, sitting down, taking notes, fully immersed in it. But you're either going to mess up your food or you're not going to listen to the podcast that deeply, because your brain, it can multitask, but it won't take it in as deeply as it potentially could. And there's so many other things in life where it seems like nowadays people just can't do them by themselves. It needs to be paired, like gym and music. If someone shows up to the gym and they forgot their headphones, they might not even go into the gym. When the gym itself should be its own, it should be enough. The single-minded, dedicated focus on the mind-muscle connection and going hard should be enough. But so often it isn't. So often we need our headphones to listen to music. We need the headphones to listen to the podcast we want to listen to. But we don't take it in deeply. Or you don't take your workout in deeply. I believe multitasking, we only have so much, I don't know if bandwidth is the right word, but I'm going to say bandwidth with our mind. And say if we have 100% and we give 50% to it to listening to a podcast, we can only give 50% of it to working out. And now this will obviously fluctuate. And when you're sitting there resting, I mean, you don't need to just not do anything. But my point being is that multitasking is not always beneficial. Sometimes it is, for sure. Sometimes for sure, you don't have time to just sit down and listen to a 4-hour podcast. Listen to it in 3 days over, 3 workouts. That's understandable. That's understandable. But I think it's really essential to remember that when your brain is, when you have a problem that you haven't worked through and your brain is trying to solve that problem, and you're trying to read, you're trying to write, you're trying to work, you'll do neither deeply. You're not going to work deeply and you're not going to actually solve that problem. And you'll just end up worrying more about the problem and worrying more about not doing your work. So I think you should finish your work, or solve the problem if you have this luxury, and then get back to your work. And in the long run, it'll be more optimal. You might think, oh, two birds with one stone. But in the long run, it'll be more optimal to just fully immerse yourself in each single task and then move on to the next. And you're also more present in the task. You can do it like it's the last time you're ever going to do it. You can give 100%. You can truly do your best, and you can feel good about that. But when you're trying to balance four things at once, not one of them can get truly 100%. And as Seneca said, the distracted mind takes in nothing deeply. And that's a true pity, because obviously, you want things to be taken in deeply. And it's so worth, maybe having to spend 2 hours instead of an hour doing two tasks that you could have done at the same time, when you'll take them both in deeply if they're important tasks. If you're, mowing the lawn, it's good to be in the present moment. It's good to take that in. But if you are doing that, it's okay to have a podcast on. It's not the end of the world. But time and place, and it's also, I think, it's very valuable to ask yourself, am I running away from something here? Am I running away from communion with myself? Because you never want to run away from that. You never want to be afraid of that, because wherever you go, there you are. And when you're alone, you should be with your best friend, not with an enemy.